See this building? This is the Louisiana State Capitol. And in this building, what they should be debating is raising wages, protecting workers, reducing crime, investing in education, expanding access to healthcare for everyone. Instead, what's often happening is you and I are being sold out. The people in this building are often paid for by the highest bidder. And it doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or a Republican, they're accepting the same money. And that's why they pursue the same agenda. That's why we see no progress. I'm Quentin Anthony Anderson, candidate for the Louisiana State Senate, and I approve this message because I want to fight for you.
Welcome to our virtual town hall. Of course, you know, we are here on behalf of Quentin Anthony Anderson. He is a candidate for Senate District 14, Louisiana Senate District 14. And with this race, there are so many important factors that come into play that can help voters make their minds up on who they want to represent them. And this is just a platform to let you know about this particular candidate, Quentin Anthony Anderson, his desire to serve, what moves him, his passions. And it also gives you a chance, you the viewer, you the person who is making the decision, because he is seeking to serve you, gives you an opportunity to get those questions live streamed. We are going live right now. You can see your comments. You do have an opportunity to ask questions of Mr. Anderson and what his platform is. Find out a little bit more about him as a candidate, as a person who wants to serve the Louisiana District 14 in the Louisiana Senate. And it also gives you an opportunity just to get a little bit more information about Louisiana politics, which we will be doing tonight in this town hall. Now, it's important for you to remember that we want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to see, hear this particular message. And it's not just about this message, but about anyone who wants to serve you. We want to tell you to be an informed electorate and make sure that you are asking the right questions of those who are seeking your vote, which is going on right now. Early voting is going on right now till February 8th. And of course, we know the election is February 15th. And I will not be by myself. I will be serving as moderator. My name is Tony King, and I have the opportunity to ask questions of Mr. Anderson to allow you to get a chance to get to know him a little bit better, find out about his platform. But I myself will not be alone. I also have the pleasure and the privilege of moderating alongside dear friend, community advocate, and of course, someone who is very profound in the media himself, Johnnie Domino, who is also going to be asking questions from all areas, from those who are on the ground level, grassroots, who have thoughts about what should be done in the Louisiana Senate District 14. Johnnie, man, how you doing?
I'm doing great tonight, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been following Quentin for a while, so I'm interested in him answering questions and just seeing, letting the people know what's going on and what's possible. I'm excited.
And here's the thing. We are going to ask those questions. This is not just going to be something that we are going to just walk through, and this is not a commercial. This is an opportunity for you to really get to know a candidate who is seeking your vote. And it's not just about him. This is something that you should be asking yourself of every candidate, no matter what office, giving them an opportunity to come and meet you right here and have an opportunity to actually speak directly to you. So you do have a chance to get those questions in the comment section. We will be periodically checking in with those comments, giving you an opportunity to directly ask Mr. Anderson himself, because we don't want anything to be lost in translation. And you can also hashtag this town hall at hashtag QAA Town Hall. Again, hashtag QAA Town Hall. But without further ado, this man is a business owner, a community advocate, someone who has not shied away from the fight. He's a scholar. He's a gentleman. He's also a Beagle owner. I got to throw that in there. I'm messing with him. But we have none other than Louisiana Senate District 14 candidate, Mr. Quentin Anthony Anderson, who is joining us on the town hall. Quentin, how you doing, man? Oh, man, headquarters. How's it going?
Good. And I guess as much of a headquarters as I can afford. This is the corner of my living room.
Doesn't matter, wherever you get the work done.
much appreciated.
For the sake of time, just to jump in, you have been someone who's been very vocal about different things that you see around the state, around your district, around anywhere, any region that you've been a part of. One thing I want people to understand or to give them an opportunity is to find out a little bit more about you. Tell us about Quentin Anthony Anderson and what has led him right now to this Senate District 14 candidacy, what your journey is.
Yeah, so I am, I'm a proud graduate of McKinley. I always have to say that. When I ran for Metro Council in 2020, there were people who I would, lay out my vision for what I wanted to do and all that stuff, and then I, tell them where I went to high school, and they were like, "Yeah, I didn't need to hear any of the rest of that stuff." As soon as you said you went to McKinley, you had my vote.
Go Big Blue.
Yeah, so there's some very real truth to that. But I was not born in Baton Rouge. I was actually born for a split second in California, then grew up in Southern California as a kid up until I was 10 years old. And then eventually we ended up in Baton Rouge. My parents moved around a whole lot, but we eventually ended up in Baton Rouge as a young teenager. So I ended up going to first a charter school called East Baton Rouge Arts and Technology School with the unfortunate acronym of EBRATS. Not entirely sure, what was going on there. And then the last couple of years, I transferred to McKinley and graduated from McKinley High School. Got my undergraduate degree from Louisiana Tech. Got a political science degree. Then got my law degree from LSU. And ever since, despite the fact that I'm still carrying that $250,000 worth of student loans for that law degree, I never practiced law. I actually just went into nonprofit advocacy. I do, because for me that made sense, right? It's a law degree. You're dealing with the law. That's what policy is. Policy is the law. So for me, it was just a different practice of law. Unfortunately, most of the jobs in policy advocacy do not pay nearly as well as if I had gone to a courtroom. So I'll be paying off that degree for the rest of my life, maybe even into the next one. Politics for me has kind of always been a passion. I got involved here. I think the first campaign I ever worked on was a friend of mine's state rep campaign when I was a kid. But then, the first time I ever ran was 2020 for Metro Council. And I did that during COVID. Part of it was I always knew that I thought that I wanted to run for office. But the older I got and the, further away from being like that young wonder kind, like I always wanted to be the youngest person that ran for something or the youngest person that won something. And further I got away from like being able to have that title, the more I started to wonder if this was really going to happen for me, because I think the main reason a lot of people don't run for office is often life just, be life, and sometimes, and there's never a perfect time to run for office. There's never going to be a time where everything just kind of lines itself up and you can just do it. So I ran during COVID because we were all stuck at home. I figured as somebody that wasn't going to be able to raise a whole lot of money, that might actually kind of level the playing field a little bit. But more importantly, I ran because I wanted to make sure I wasn't just good in my own head, that I wasn't one of these people that talks to the cable news, that talks back to the cable news. And I think, you know what, I should run for office. I wanted to make sure that like when I say something, people are getting it the way that I mean it. And even though I didn't win, I think I raised a couple $1,000s and I came 106 votes shy of the runoff. And even though he's a friend of mine, I always like to make this reference. Devontae Lewis was in that race and he's a PSC commissioner now, and he raised $30,000 and he came in fifth. So I take great pride in that. I always tell people that, I am change at a discount. If you want to change the world, you can do it at half the cost if you invest in me. And then last year, I pissed off a lot of people by running for Congress. I'm not entirely sure why that would upset anybody. It was an open seat, but I learned a lot. I think it was the most expensive civics lesson I've ever invested in. But I campaigned across all 10 parishes. I think the thing I take greatest pride in that race is that I think I did about the same in every parish and in every precinct, which kind of, I think people think that this was me like playing 4D chess, that I was going to run for Congress and then like parlay that into a state Senate race. And if I was going to do that, I would have saved a bunch of gas money, would have saved a bunch of time and just knocked on doors here. But I actually went to all 10 parishes. I mean, I was knocking on doors, in the middle of nowhere. I was knocking on doors in places where it was nothing but Trump signs and, some things, hanging in effigy. And I just have to ask God, put a hedge, and then I'm going there putting my door hangers and, being a weird black guy walking into weird carports, hoping that I can put that door hanger on the door before they catch me.
Sounds dangerous.
Yeah, but you know what? I've never felt in danger in this whole time. Like, I think about it sometimes. I think about, like, this is kind of crazy that I'm just kind of out here, just like going into neighborhoods that nobody invited me into. Yeah. But I have found that more often than not, people were just kind of, it was refreshing for them to see somebody doing it,
Well,
and yeah.
I think one thing that stands out in what you said was that the message was evenly received throughout all 10 of those parishes, which, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it means that the message overall is being received. There is something that people are welcomed in hearing, regardless of what your national political affiliation is. People can sometimes get too caught up in that and not realize that, hey, that there's more that unites us than divides us. There's more that, we both want change. We both want this. We both want that, and so it just shows that that it's a universal message, regardless of what party it may come from. Now, here's one question that I do want to bring up, because you briefly mentioned it, and that is, for someone who is just now becoming familiar with Quentin Anthony Anderson, and they're saying, okay, well, you may have run for these things before, and no offense, you look really young.
I will take that.
You may have student loan debt, but it ain't showing on your face, man. And so the thing is, there may be some that may think that you're young, or there's a certain level of experience that may not be there. But you mentioned something about policy, that you have experience in drafting policy, which we all know later grows on to become, or can become, bills and laws. So you have experience in that. Tell us more about that.
Well, yeah. So for me, one, I think that nobody should run for office if you don't want to win, because winning is where those promises that you make, that's where you're able to implement policy. That's where you're able to pass a bill, get laws passed, and actually have an impact. So when you say things like, I think healthcare is a right, that doesn't mean a whole lot if you're not in a position to then create access to that right. And the only way you can do that isn't by, simply protesting or simply showing up at committee and giving witness testimony. It's ultimately being able to get the bill passed, being able to cast the vote, introduce the legislation. And so policy matters. It's the most important part of all of this. And it's kind of crazy that sometimes people get elected for 20 years and can't speak eloquently about policy. That's kind of a misnomer. But in 2015, I was the campaign director for the campaign for Common Sense School Discipline Reform in Illinois. And the main role that I had was I needed to finish the negotiations for the bill and then shepherd that bill through the Illinois State Legislature. It was a split legislature, plus you had a Republican governor. And the reason I kind of often reference this experience is, one, the job that I'm applying for is legislative. And so, one of the easy knocks that incumbents in the establishment always give against challengers is, well, the main reason that you shouldn't vote for this hope and changey candidate is because this other candidate has been there before. And, they know where the restroom is, and think about what sort of tax savings that is. Quentin's going to take 10 minutes to find the restroom. That's your tax dollars. Larry knows where the restroom is. That's $10 that's 10 minutes that you guys don't have to spend, taxpayers. But for me, I've done it, right? My job was to negotiate the legislation. So first, how do you address the different interests of different stakeholders that are at the table? Because not everybody's there for the same reasons. Everybody's not an activist. Everybody doesn't care about racial justice. Everybody doesn't care about what you care about. So do you have points, either hard points in the bill, concessions that you've made, or do you have political cover that you can offer the people around the table for them to vote for it or support it? But then I also had to figure out, how do you make sure that you don't lose your supporters, your base, the people that sent you there to get the thing, when you're making these compromises. And what I found in that was, as long as you're honest with people and you kind of walk them through it, one, people are smarter than we sometimes give them credit for. But right. Two, when you're honest and you show your work, they understand why the compromise had to be made. I was sitting there with a bunch of kids. Like, these were high school kids that helped me shepherd this bill. They would come with me and talk to legislators and tell them their story in school about how they got suspended or expelled. And so, like, I was most worried about disappointing them, but they were the most realistic about it because they would get to see when a legislator would look them in the eye and would tell them, I can't see any reason why I won't vote for this. And over time, what they came to understand was that's not a yes, though. That's how sophisticated they became. And so when we're sitting there making those concessions, when we come back and we say, hey, the principals, the people who represent the principals, they came back with this paragraph and it kind of, it does weaken this part of the bill that we worked on, but we might be able to get X, Y, and Z vote. They were down for it and they understood it. So if you open up the process, but also you're strategic, you understand that, this can't just be a preaching to the choir bill. It has to be a bill that in the chamber that it's in has the best likelihood of passing. And that was eye-opening for me because was it the perfect bill? No. In fact, I think it's gone through plenty of revisions since then. It was about 10 years ago that it passed. But it's the difference between getting something done and just kind of doing something because it fires up the base or it's good for fundraising or, like it checks a box. Like when you really get policy done, it requires you to, bring everybody involved, but also you got to be strategic.
But the point of the matter is that there is experience in actually drafting policy. And so there are some who may believe that just because you may serve in a certain position that you may have experience drafting policy, but that's not necessarily the case. And then there are some that believe that you only can be a lawmaker and draft policy, in which we are seeing now nationally that that's not necessarily the case. Anyone technically can draft policy. And so what you're saying is you actually have a history of actually drafting policy, which is necessary in terms of serving. And speaking of serving, you've been very passionate and you can always tell when someone really, truly, deeply cares about something, especially when they're willing to do it at a cost to themselves, meaning AKA free. And so what I want to ask is, what is your passion behind wanting to serve the Louisiana Senate District 14?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is people always ask me like why I'm running, and I should be even more blunt. The first reason why I'm running is because I do believe that I can win. I think I'm going to win, and I think that I mentioned this before. I think that when you run for these things, even though there are some times where you're running and the odds are against you, you should never run with the intent of just running to make a point or just running to raise an issue, because the votes that people are casting, those are real votes. And they could cast them for somebody else that at the very least, has a shot and is closer to their interests. So when you ask people for their votes, you need to really be focused on winning. So I did not just run because I want to be labeled a perennial candidate. And I think I'm one race away from being that. So I got to win this one. So that's the first thing. I'm running because I do think that I can win. And I think that if I win, I can make an impact for the people of this district and for the people of this state in a unique way that most politicians in this state can't. And that's because I don't have the same strings attached to me as other politicians. I am judicious about where I get my money from and where I don't. That's one of the reasons why I don't got a whole lot of it. But the main reason for that, it's not because it's some sort of gimmick. And trust me, it would be nice to have adequate resources. I feel terrible about the fact that I have people working full time for me, putting real full time hours for me because they believe in me and they believe in this campaign. And I feel bad that I can't pay them. I feel bad that all of us are just making significant sacrifices to be able to do this.
Right.
But when you take the shortcut, when you take the $50,000 contribution that some of these folks are offering to be able to make sure that you breeze your way into office, you end up not being the principal at the table. You end up not being the actual representative that can vote just based on, is this good for District 14 or is this bad for District 14? Right. You end up being the person, you end up essentially being somebody's proxy in the meeting. And as soon as the meeting is over, you got to go and make a phone call to the person who actually does make the decision. And that's how people don't get the representation that they should. That's how you end up with, districts, like ours, where the people that make up the majority of the people in that district live in the worst conditions of that district, but that's because the person who's representing them, those people aren't the real constituents. It's the money. But, and I've mentioned this before, it's a two-way street. Yes, the politicians are shameless, but we keep voting for these people.
Yeah.
Right? Like we keep voting for them. I mean, how many times do people, say that, well, I ain't really been paying attention, but I guess I've seen so-and-so sign, or I did get that, thing in the mail. If we keep on phoning it in, I guess it makes for good conversation every 4 years in between to complain about what just happened. But like, that's really where you can kind of change that. Like, if you just look up a candidate, 9 times out of 10, you'll actually realize, oh, the candidate that like I keep hearing about probably isn't the best candidate. The reason I hear about them is because they have the most money. Mm-hmm. Democracy is hard. Democracy is hard. It required, and I think sometimes for years, I think we tried to downplay like what your role in it was, because we wanted to make democracy seem as easy as possible. You just got to vote. Everything else is taken care of. But the truth of the matter is everything else isn't taken care of. You have to do your homework about everything from dog catcher to president. And if you're not willing to do that, the establishment knows that it's easy to sneak one in on them.
Well,
and so
that's
one thing that you bring up is that, like you said, democracy takes work from us as constituents. It is important for us to be a part of that. And that's something that we're asking you to be a part of as well. You can put your questions in the chat. This is a town hall. This is a chance for you to ask Mr. Anderson what his platform is, find out about him, also how he plans on serving the district if elected. And so this is your opportunity right now to take democracy in your hands and to be an active participant of it. Johnnie, you were getting ready to say something.
No, I just wanted to get in there, man, because when he started talking about grassroots, and good evening, y'all. I've been really working on my manners. I'm just the unpolitical common man, the uncompromised common man, and to be honest, Anthony, anybody who knows me knows that I'm a real incumbent hunter, right? No shot at nobody else in this race, because I got love in this race too. But I found you very impressive on Tony King's show. And I was like, whoa, I hadn't heard somebody talking like that for a while. Like never, you know what I mean? So, I agree with Miss King that's in here now, man. I love grassroots. That's when you really find out the real problems and you're knocking on doors. And I love grassroots as well. That's my foundation. When I knew nothing else, I did grassroots and going door to door. And I'm going to tell you something. The thing that people miss out on grassroots is you don't know whose door you're knocking on.
Yeah.
You don't know who's going to open. You don't know who's there that day. You can go look for the husband and read the sheet, but you might meet the wife or the grandma that day. So what I like about it is it's interactive with the real people. And what we've getting away from that, all the campaigns that I've worked, look, people are very scared and they get very comfortable and they don't go out there anymore. So can you tell me a little bit about some things that you found out about being in the streets, meeting people where they are? Did you find some interesting things? Because I love the parts when you say that, people need to stop following money. They need to stop following popularity, and they need to really look into these people. That's why I was willing to do this and really sit down and talk to you. But tell me something that you've learned by going knock door to door that you didn't know before then, before doing that now, if you have one of those. Or tell me how important is grassroots to you if you don't have an answer for that first part. How important is grassroots and meeting the people where they are? How important is that to you?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I think a few things. One, the reason, being grassroots and being a candidate that knocks on the door, shows up in the community. I mean, even at the bare minimum, lives in the district, which I have told people.
Wow.
Yeah, I have told people one thing that will change no matter who gets elected is I believe this will be the first time in a few years that the state senator will be a resident of State Senate District 14. I don't think that shot's fired. Maybe not.
As long as you tell the truth, man, you better let it out.
Honesty is a quality that is missing on politicians. So that's nothing but honesty.
Anybody offended by that is already done like me. So it's fine. But But there's actually some seriousness to that. The reason it's important to not only live in the community, but then once you're campaigning, once you represent, to be visible, to be available, to be present on a regular basis, is because that's how you properly do the job. The job of any representative, whether you're on the Metro Council, in the state legislature, or you're in Congress, it really, and I've said this all the time, and I sound like a broken record, it should be the most selfless role in our democracy, because your job is necessarily to represent a collective interest. Your job is to represent all the people around you. And so sometimes what that might mean, in fact, it should mean it all, a lot, is it may not be something that makes your socks roll up and down. It may not be something that even affects you. But if 80% of the people around you are affected by it, now it needs to be your top priority. I give people this example. I'm not a homeowner, but in my district, there are quite a few homeowners, and the costs of property insurance keeps on skyrocketing. So even though this is not something that I deal with on a regular basis, this is a top priority for me because it's what my constituents care about. So when you're not in the community, but you're still casting votes in the legislature, whose interests are you voting on? Because you don't know.
That's what I was looking for. That's what I was looking for, Tony.
Yeah,
see,
but again, that is exactly, the benefit of having you here. And that's why we really appreciate your perspective, because it is that grassroots level, it is who all is being affected in the district. And so speaking of community, do you believe that because you are actually in the community that you are vying to represent, do you think that gives you an advantage that maybe some of your predecessors may not have had?
Yes. Yes. I mean, if you're not driving on these roads, if you're not sending your kids to these schools, if you don't live in these neighborhoods, not only are you uninformed when you're casting these votes, but worse than that, when you make some of these deals where your community might not always get the best end of them, in effect, you're selling out people, and you don't have to live with the effects of that sellout. It's not going to affect you when you go home. You're not facing what's going to happen to District 14 because you're in District 15. So you call your senator and make sure he votes the right way in your interest, because I did that. Senator. Yeah, because I hate, it's sort of like the joke the deadbeat dads give. Man, I'm praying for my kids all the time. They're growing up without a father. I mean, if you don't live in the district, then in effect, you're saying good luck to the folks that live there, because I don't have to live with the consequences of the votes that I'm casting. So I mean, it just means that you have skin in the game. And so being grassroots means that you actually are hearing from people. I'm not saying that everybody has, because I don't want to be ageist, right? I think an 80-year-old could probably do a really good job, even if he doesn't have the capacity to go door to door all the time. But it's about being responsive. I know, but you get what I'm saying.
I disagree. I want Papa on them to get out of the way, man. All them guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I guess what I mean is it's about the intention. It's about the intention. Are you willing to be available? There are some people where they could be available, but they're like, I could win without doing that, so I'm not going to. And I think that's the thing. That instinct is what you want to get rid of.
Right. And so, one thing we want to encourage you to do is to continue to be very active in the chat. We see you in the chat. We're not ignoring you. Wyatt, we definitely appreciate your perspective. Kathy has kind of a comment or a question she wants to ask. She says she saw you out at the protest today at the state capitol fighting for democracy, and wondered why your two opponents were not there. If you'd like to speak more about that, you can.
Yeah, I cannot speak for them. But no, to be fair, I don't think that there were any notable public officials. I don't think there were any elected officials that were there. Courage can sometimes cost some political capital, and I guess some people didn't have enough to spend. So, it is what it is.
And again, Alexis, we see you and your comments, and Tawanda, we definitely appreciate all of your comments. Remember, Continue getting those comments and questions in. We will give you an opportunity to ask Mr. Anderson himself. We don't want the message to be lost, so this is a great opportunity for you to do that, and also to tell your friends about what is going on right now with the town hall. Remember, you can hashtag it QAA Town Hall. That's QAA Town Hall. Now, speaking of being at the state capitol steps, there are certain aspects of your platform that I would love to hear more about, especially when you talk about things, when you talk about the economic investment and the economics and the finances of those that live in the district that you seek to represent. There's a wide array of what is going on. You have some that may be experiencing, some level of comfort, but then you also have others that may not. And part of that is a livable wage.
Yep.
You've talked about on your platform your desire to want to raise minimum wage, investing in certain aspects of infrastructure and public education. Just those two things. Would you like to talk about what your plan is or what your desire is as it pertains to raising minimum wage?
Yeah. So the group voters organized to educate, or vote of the experience. They've had iterations of their name, but we just had I just spoke with them yesterday, and they asked me what is the first bill that I would introduce, the first three, and I'm not completely decided on like all the first three, but one of the first ones, if not the first one that I would introduce, would be to raise the minimum wage. Now, look, I get that it's probably not going to happen because, Democrats are in the super minority, but even if they were in the majority, the kind of Democrats that are there probably would still vote against raising the minimum wage. But we haven't done it since 2008. And I think that there is something to be said for even, as a Democrat, even Democrats showing the desire to do so, showing that at least there's somebody in the state legislature that does understand that, post-COVID, the cost of living has skyrocketed, and yet we're not doing anything at all to try to, make life a little bit easier for you. So introducing legislation to raise the minimum wage and then forcing my colleagues to either vote for it or against it, but put yourself on the record so that going into 27, we can kind of see, who are the folks who need to be here and who are the folks who we need to replace.
Yeah.
I like
so
that.
that's the first thing. But my North Star is a living wage, and it would be a dynamic living wage, one that tracks with the cost of living, because I do think that part of the scam is that workers have to go back to the legislature and beg for the legislature to even consider raising the minimum wage, and it should happen regularly, and it should track with the cost of living. It shouldn't be just sort of we negotiate what is the bare minimum that employers can tolerate. It needs to be aligned with what the circumstances of the moment are, especially because wages are about to bottom out very soon with the advent of AI and how quickly AI is becoming very, very competent. They say that this is the year of the AI agent, and I think that what that means is this is a year that AI, they're going to be able to roll out the AI IRS agent, the AI car salesman, the AI that can do a specialized job and does it better than you. And so what are we doing to protect not only workers, but wages? And the very least that we could do is raise the minimum wage and introduce a living wage so that at least on that front end, that's, we've sort of done what we can to make sure that if you're employed by a business, the floor is a little bit higher. That we're not saying that, because at this point, getting paid $7.25 is insulting. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with $7.25 on a 40-hour work week? On an 80-hour work week, that's still crap. If you work 80 hours, you're still not at the bare minimum that most people think we should be at, which is $15. If you work 80 hours, you are still not making what you would have made at 40 hours a week at a $15 an hour job.
Right.
So like some of this is ethics, it's morals, but it's also about the world that we live in. I think it's important that our laws reflect that we're trying to fight for you, that we're trying to look out for you.
So we're getting some action in the chat, and we thank you all for joining us. We do have a question from Lisa King, who asks, can you talk a little bit about Jeff Landry's regressive tax plan?
Yeah. So the long and the short of it is that the legislature just voted to approve Jeff Landry's tax reforms that, in effect, slashed state income taxes. He was trying to zero them out. He wasn't able to completely zero them out, but he was trying to zero out state income taxes. And in exchange, he was going to try to make up for what was lost, because I think people think tax cuts are free. They're not. Make up for what was lost by raising the sales tax. And we already had the highest sales tax in the country. And so now, we just added a little bit of lagniappe on top of that. What people, the phrase regressive, I think what people don't understand sometimes, and conservatives are always preaching this, they're always talking about flat taxes, and their argument is it's simpler. People understand flat taxes. They understand if it's just 5% across the board. They understand that. But what people sometimes forget is that flat taxes, or any tax really, that's just the same no matter who you are, it's more expensive the broker you are, right? And that's what regressive taxes are. So, for example, let's take an apple, and I'm about to make it really expensive just to make it easy to talk about. If an apple was normally $1, but now we're going to put a $4 tax on it. If all I have is $10, then now I have to pay $5 for that apple. That's a 50% tax for me. That's taxing me 50% of my income. If I have $1,000, I barely feel it. So when I go shopping, the richer I am, the less I feel this regressive tax, the less I feel this tax increase. The poorer I am, the more I feel it. Income taxes are supposed to be a proportion of your income so that everybody can pay them and it doesn't feel like more pain the poorer that you are. 5% of, $30,000, you can deal with 5% because it feels like 5%. But 5% of a static good all of a sudden feels more expensive because, you only have this amount of money. It's not tracking with the amount it's not getting lower at scale. We as Democrats, one of the values that we believe in when it comes to taxation is we believe that people should pay their fair share. But that's about also the pain that people feel. It is a different pain for a working class person to pay 25, 30, 40% of their income in taxes, because some things just cost what they cost. Just because I'm broke doesn't mean that Walmart lowers my prices when I go shopping. Yeah. It's a different level of pain when you're broke. Yeah. When you're more wealthy, this is why when people get upset when we talk about higher income tax rates for the rich, they're like, well, you're punishing the rich for being rich. No, it's about the practicality of how it feels. If you have $1 billion and you pay $20 million in tax, and that's a small percentage, I'm just giving round numbers, but you pay $20 million in taxes, that's a lot of money objectively, right? Like that sounds like a lot of money. I can't pay $20 million in taxes, but for that billionaire, that is couch change. And that honestly is where you should be talking about the tax purge, is how does it impact somebody? How does it impact somebody's life? Is this tax bill going to make it harder for working class families to put food on the table, or is it going to make it easier? And I think that this tax bill makes it harder. And so I wouldn't have supported it. My opponents supported it, but more disturbingly, most of the Democrats in the legislature supported it. And most of the people who are going to suffer from it are the people that vote repeatedly for Democrats. So, tell me how that works.
Yeah, party and politics, party and color don't work no more, man. You got to get to the real deal. Vote. I am no party, first of all. I went no party because I don't like Democrats or Republicans. They got bad people in both sides. I'm no party, so I can pick the best person for the job. Man, we got some good questions in the
very good questions.
Very good. I want to go to these questions, guys, and I got a few too, because I'm gonna ask my old plain layman terms. I want to go here with Justin from Justin Brown. I like that. Yeah. Majority of Larry Selder's bills passed stem from his 66% pass rate during John Bell Edwards, but he has lacked passable bills with the new governor. How will you be different with the Republican majority?
Yeah, I like that. I really do.
Good question.
Yeah. No, it's a practical question.
Right.
I think that there's a time for campaigning and there's a time for governing. And I tell people all the time that you have to navigate the world as it is to get to the world as it should be. And so I am very well aware of the fact that if I get elected, I'd be getting elected to a legislature with a supermajority Republicans, with a Republican governor, but also that I'd have a mandate that progress is not an option. I don't think that anybody expects me to, pass the New Deal, but I think that people do expect that for the next 2 years, something happens. The way that I'll work with them is, like I mentioned before with the school to prison pipeline bill, I think I'm pretty good at political strategy. I think I'm pretty good at identifying people's interests. I think I'm pretty good. I think if people are consistent about the values that they say out loud, I think that I can make compromises based on meeting you where you say that you are. And I will negotiate in good faith. I told somebody today, I would much rather negotiate with a bunch of principled conservatives than a bunch of corrupt Democrats, because at the very least, like I know where they are, right? Like they're always going to be at the same place. They're always going to be on that corner. And so no matter what turns I make, if you're principled, you'll always be there. One of the issues that I have sometimes is, if you are bought and paid for, if you're corrupt, you will say one thing. What will be on your website will be one thing. What you tell people you believe is one thing. But then the truth of the matter is you got to do all this other digging. You got to talk to donors. You got to do all that other stuff to actually find out what actually moves you. But I think also that's part of what I'd bring into this is I'm not going in eyes wide open. I will make those sort of purist and ideological appeals where I can, but I'll also make practical appeals where I have to. I know that not everybody is there for the reasons that were on their website. I will do what I have to. I'm not going to compromise my values, but I mentioned this before. If I'm showing people my work, if I'm doing the town halls, if I'm, every time a bill comes up, I'm explaining it on a regular basis of what we're dealing with and what I reasonably think I can get done. I think that people will understand difficult votes. I think part of the difficulty now is that a lot of these legislators don't go back to the community. They're not hosting the town halls. They're not breaking down the last session. And so when they cast difficult votes, and this is me being charitable, when they cast difficult votes, voters might misinterpret why they voted the way that they did because you did not walk them through that process.
Right.
I think that it's good politics to be accessible because then, Ms. Jenkins does know that, like, the only reason I voted for this, she heard 3 months ago that I didn't think that I'd be able to get 80% of what I want. And so 40% might be the closest that I can get. And this is what 40% looks like. So I think for me, one, the willingness to make the compromise, but also feeling like I at least have the political cover because I'm going back to the community. I'm walking them through the process. I'm not selling them out. I'm going to tell them what the stakes are and what the other options were. The last thing I'll say, though, is part of the reality of what we're going to be dealing with is the fact that when you're in the super minority, most of what you can do is making bad bills not as bad. And I do want to level set with people. Like, I don't want people thinking that because you vote for Quentin Anthony Anderson, like there's going to be ideal, perfect bills. It still has to be like, if it's going to go into effect, if it's going to affect your life, it still has to get past all of these Republicans. It still has to get past all these Democrats who are pushing against me. It still has to get little Jeff Landry to sign it. So it has to address the interests of all of those folks before it ever gets to your kitchen table. So also be realistic there. My North Star, you're never going to forget what my North Star is, but also what gets delivered to you is always going to be in pursuit of that, but it's probably going to be well short of it, at least in the current dynamics.
Well, I think you kind of touched on 2 points that I find pretty interesting. You first mentioned about how some politicians are in bed with their donors and they have to go back and ask certain
Many.
things.
I'm sorry.
No. But
many politicians. I'm sorry, Tony. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I promise.
No, it's okay. The bad thing about that is that politicians who are like that are essentially the people who they are allowing to make the decision do not have the accountability of the voters. So they are allowed to be able to do and say and operate and pass certain measures that they will never be held accountable on. And that's something that's very dangerous. But we do, just to continue on with some of the questions that we have in the chat.
I like that, Derek.
Alexis, I saw your question, but we have one more in front of you. And that is Derek Jackson. He states that during the Jindal administration, a lot of mental health hospitals were shut down. With so many now suffering from mental health issues, will you push to try and bring back mental health facilities to the state?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So any bills that allow that, any bills that would allow for the mechanism of expanding not only creating the facilities but also creating access, I'd be in support of. I think the access part is the bigger issue. Right now, access to mental health is more difficult than you think. A lot of insurers don't cover it, and so if you're it's not that a lot of insurers don't cover it. It's that a lot of them don't pay out at the same rate that they pay like traditional physicians. And so for a lot of mental health professionals, they don't accept traditional insurance. So you got to pay cash, that sort of thing. And it does end up becoming prohibitively expensive for a lot of people. It becomes almost a luxury. And in our community, we talk all the time about the importance of, in the Black community in particular, particularly with Black men, we talk about the importance of addressing our mental health. But, you know, if you're talking about, you know, Whole Food style prices for getting access to mental health, for a lot of people, I'll get there when my lifestyle allows me to. And I think that we have to do a better job of lowering the barrier of access to mental health care, whether that is building more facilities, which is going to be difficult because, you know, this is the same Republican Party that shuttered the charity hospital system. So if their framing is that, you know, we can get rid of access just to basic health care for those that are underprivileged and underserved,
what would happen with mental health?
Yeah, like in their mind, they think that that's like, you know, giving poor people gold toilets. But, you know,
right.
Again, the North Star is creating those facilities, and I want to kind of take a step back. One of the reasons why, again, this is what Democrats typically believe. One of the reasons why I'd be in support of the state creating these mental health facilities is when you simply are relying on free enterprise, private interest to do something, it has to make business sense for them. Mm-hmm. And that's fine for some things. That is fine for some things, right? Like, you know, everybody's not going to drink the same soda. Everybody's not going to, you know, buy the same air fryer, stuff like that. And you also don't have a right to either of those things. Those, you know, if you can afford a good air fryer, then you can buy one. But if we say that you have a right to something, then that also means that we have to guarantee you access to it. And necessarily, if the only people who are providing that service are private providers, then there's going to almost certainly be a group of people who simply do not make business sense to those people, but still need their access. And so how do you provide that access? That's where you end up having government creating programs or government creating facilities, because government doesn't need to make a profit. It just needs to cover costs. And so if government at least has an option, no matter what, if you can't get it from somewhere else, and we say that you have a right, that necessarily means that there has to be an avenue for you getting it through some means. So that's the value there. We tried to have this conversation during the healthcare debate about why we wanted to have a public option, and people, you know, particularly conservatives, they walked around with their hair on fire because they were like, oh, the government getting involved in healthcare and all this. But you have private insurers that simply cannot or will not provide insurance at certain costs for certain communities. Yeah. So the way that you address that is that at the very least, you have that great equalizer of a government plan that it's not going to be the fanciest, but it will be at cost, and it will keep everybody else honest, and it will give at least people who are seen as high risk or are seen as unattractive to those private insurers, it gives them an option. So the same principle I would apply to, you know, what my views would be on, you know, the state not only providing pathways of access, but also creating some of those facilities, those mental health facilities.
So we have a couple more questions. And so Alexis, and this is right on time because I just saw a story about this on WBRZ, and that is Chicken Shack is turning 90 this week and has provided real options for individuals who are justice impacted. businesses like Chicken Shack don't get any special incentives.
Mm.
What is your thoughts on leveling the field for the small businesses in the state and district, much like historic businesses like Chicken Shack?
Important question, Quentin. I get asked this by small business owners every day. We want to know. Let's go, brother.
So my thing is, I think that most of the politicians in this state, for whatever reason, we're always bending over backwards for the companies that sometimes make record profits. They have all the advantages, and then they will, performatively complain. They'll say that if I don't get another tax break, I'm going to leave, and we believe them. And we kind of leave the small businesses out to dry. We don't give them any special incentives. We charge them out the wazoo just to register and get off the ground. We're not realistic about the fact that most small businesses aren't successful the first time, second time, third time. We need to kind of have people that understand that it should be incumbent upon us to want to foster an environment where you're successful, and we're doing everything we can for you to be successful, that we're trying to lower those upfront costs those first few years when you're just trying to get off the ground, that we're trying to make it easier for you, that we're giving you access. I want to, sometimes when we talk about things like universal broadband and creating public broadband, people are thinking about it just for poor people, or they're thinking about it just for families. But I want to create it so that might just be a cost, an overhead cost that businesses, whether you're a remote business or you're a brick and mortar, you just don't have to think about. Some of these things that you can create, you can kind of lower the overhead for some of these businesses. I want to eliminate business registration costs, or at the very least subsidize it. I want you to be able to try over and over and over again. I want you to be able to go on, because here's the thing. I want you to be successful. We need you to be successful. We do everything that we can to try to bring Amazon here, but I want the next Amazon to come from here. So what are we doing there? I want to give you favorable rent. I want to figure out ways that we can make this as easy as possible for you to be successful. If we can create some sort of incubation period of 5 years where, we're doing everything we can to make your fees, your business registration and operation fees, anything related to government registration and government compliance, as close to zero as humanly possible. I want to do that. I want to work with small business. If we raise the minimum wage, one of the questions that often gets asked is from business owners, how are we going to make that work? I want to be able to, subsidize maybe the first couple years as we as we introduce a raised minimum wage. Maybe we do make up for some of that cost so that it's easier. And as your business picks up, you can start to fill in that. But I want to make it easier for small businesses to be able to pay their employees a living wage. But
go ahead.
No,
I was about to say. I was just going to say, because small and moderate business, that is truly the foundation. Despite what we think, that is the foundation of our economic system. And so
that's where most people work.
That is how this whole thing works. It's easy. You brought up Amazon. I know it's easy because that's a recent large business that has joined the Baton Rouge community, but it's not the Amazons that are keeping Baton Rouge afloat and have kept Baton Rouge afloat. It's not even the plants, as much as they employ and have provided a great living wage for those that work there. It's the other businesses that have sustained Baton Rouge and kept us afloat. So it's very important.
And there's one more thing I want. Yeah. One more thing I want to add on that, because there are other ways that you can support small businesses that don't always, I think the easy thing is to talk about things like opportunity zones and like tax cuts and stuff like that. And I think some of those things are important, but I also think about some of the things that you don't always associate with small business, promotion and growth and development. I am a big believer in a modern public transit system. Mm-hmm. And the reason I connect this to small business is I have lived in places that have really quality public transit. They have rail systems, things like that. And when you have a public transit system that works, everybody doesn't have to drive. And when everybody doesn't have to drive, when you can go to your local metro station and it's reliable enough that you'll go there, go to work, and then when you're getting off of work, you'll walk a couple blocks to that station again, and you'll go home. The foot traffic between your job and that station is what is the lifeblood for many businesses. There are restaurants, there are boutiques that you would never go to if you didn't have to walk a couple of blocks.
Yep.
And there are places that are only alive in places like Chicago and DC and New York because your normal commute makes you walk a block and a half, and you do have to pass by that spot that you never would have seen. And in a place like Baton Rouge, where you have to drive to get to most places, 9 times out of 10, you're skipping dozens of small businesses that you probably would have been interested in if you just had, if there had been the foot traffic, if we had sidewalks, if we were encouraging people to actually, explore their city. So things like public transit, even though it doesn't sound like it's a small business sort of position or place where you would support small businesses, it has a direct correlation to the success of your local small businesses.
And I just want to say this, and I'm so grateful for the active chat that we have, getting the questions in, and you still have just a little bit of time, because for the sake of time, we know, Quentin, you are spending a lot of time going door to door, even though it's still late at night, but you're still putting your plan together and things like that. And we want to encourage you to continue to get the message out to your friends and let them know that we are still here for the moment with the town hall. Remember, hashtag QAA Town Hall. Early voting is going on now and will continue until February 8th. And of course, the election is February 15th. We have Quentin Anthony Anderson here, who is vying to represent the Louisiana Senate District 14. What are some things that stand out to you as we get ready to kind of start to descend here? What are some things that stand out to you leading up to election that you just want to put on the minds of voters and encourage them to think about as they go into the voting booth?
Yeah, and real quick, let me answer Kathy's question real quick, because I can answer this pretty quick. I am not a fan of school vouchers, and here's why. I believe in fully funding our traditional community-based public schools. I think that public schools are the promise of public schools are the greatest weapon against generational poverty. The school around the corner from you, the one that you can walk to, needs to be the best possible school that our tax dollars can pay for. You shouldn't have to travel a couple cities over. You shouldn't have to travel 10 minutes. You shouldn't have to get bused across town. The school around the corner. And if our schools are failing right now, then obviously we are not investing enough to keep them, to make sure that we're fulfilling that promise. So it seems counterintuitive that when we most need to fund our schools, when our schools most need resources, that we would divert any of them from the schools themselves to private interests or to private schools. I think the premise of private schools is kind of counterintuitive with the idea of vouchers itself. The premise of private schools is that they're better because they take a more free enterprise approach, right? Supply and demand and that sort of thing, that they can trim the fat. They're more efficient, that sort of thing. Well, then they should not need government subsidies in order to operate. I believe in school choice, but I don't necessarily believe that our tax dollars should fund that choice. I think that choice is part of the capitalism, part of the capitalist model that private schools are a part of. Do I want to pay for a different alternative, or is the local school around the corner, which should be just as good as the private school that I'm about to send my kid to, do I send my kid to the public school, or do I pay for an alternative? And those alternatives can pay for all the things that some people in this town want, right? You can pay for your kid not to go to school with too many people that look like me. You can pay for your kid to go to an all-girls school, all-boys school. You can pay for them to go to a religious school. But the thing that I have a problem with is this idea that you're paying for it because the public schools simply aren't good enough. So until they are where they need to be, we have no business diverting public funds. But going back to what you were saying, which was what was it? Sorry.
Well, just talking about some things that stand out in this very important election.
Yeah.
Like as these voters get ready to head into the election booth, what are some things that stand out? Why is this election so important?
Well, I think it's important, one, because I guess there are a bunch of different reasons. If you're a Democrat, it's important because our numbers are so low that each and every Democrat, whether you're in Baton Rouge or not, matters. And the type of Democrat matters. It matters that you have somebody that will actually cast votes for the things that we say as a party we believe in, and somebody that you might need to go and ask them who you need to speak to instead of speaking to them. I think it matters again that you have a Democrat in there that actually wants to be in the majority, because he understands that that being in the majority is where then we can set the agenda, then we can actually start to pass legislation, then we can actually have an impact on people's lives. I think that it matters that you have a representative that is not bought and paid for, that you have somebody that can objectively call balls and strikes relative to your interests. Is this legislation that comes before my committee, is this good for District 14 or is it bad? Not, well, it might be good because, you know, this guy gave me a $5,000 contribution and he's the only reason why I was able to make my way into this chamber. I think that it's important that we have objective, independent representation, because that's how you actually get votes that are consistent with your interests. That's how you don't get votes, you know, like for the tax bill. I think that most people in my district are going to be negatively affected by it. So for me, the politics is simple. Will most people be negatively affected by it? Yeah. Okay. I'm voting against it. It shouldn't be more complicated than that. But I think from a narrative perspective, big picture, the reason why this election is so important is because clearly power thinks that it's very important too. They've put a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of energy in trying to prove that what we're trying to do simply cannot happen. That you can't beat the machine, that you can't beat money, that like talking about the issues, going to the voters, knocking on the doors, you know, talking about that you're not going to take this money and that money, that simply cannot work in Louisiana. And the powers that be are trying to make a point in this race. They are trying to show that little Negro over there that's exciting people, that is not a successful path, and we're gonna prove it. We're gonna prove it on the 15th.
I don't mean to cut you. Go ahead, man. Go ahead. Look, you make me excited, man. I ain't lying. I like to hear you talk like that, man. That machine big, bro.
But if we're able to do that, and I keep using this example because my mom introduced it. She said that these people, the people in power, they view my candidacy like a roach, and what they mean is that's exactly right. There are a bunch of them coming, and I absolutely believe it. I think that there are people that never thought that born and raised in Louisiana, born and raised in Baton Rouge, never thought that they could get involved, because the things that you had to do, the people that you had to get involved with, the rings that you had to kiss, they simply weren't going to be able to do that. And they are seeing, you know, this broke brother in a small 1-bedroom apartment downtown take on authority. And it's not me. I'm not special. It's the fact that the voters are so tired of it that they're willing to get behind somebody like me. And if they're willing to get behind somebody like me, there are a bunch of much smarter, much more passionate, much more capable people that are coming right behind me. And so this race matters because this opens up that door for those other good roaches.
I got to let this out. I'm one of them roaches. I'm a roach. I'm claiming to be a roach right here. Ghetto ways. I am one of them roaches, and I took down a 36-year incumbent. You can do it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it again. I'm the incumbent hunter. Because guess what? If my black representation ain't making black people better, I'm going to try something different, brother. You can do it, brother. I just want to be positive about what you're saying. Hey, I'm one of them roaches. There's a million of us. And we say the same old story, the same old thing, same old thing. Hey, man, look, don't get me on the soapbox. I'm sorry.
But Johnnie is making a very good point, and that is that the message is resonating and it's getting out there. And when we're joking about roaches, but at the end of the day, there are citizens, there is a constituency that wants change. They are hungry for change, and they want to see things that are done in their community that will benefit them. And so it's important to make sure that representation is always working on behalf of, for this particular district, the Louisiana Senate District 14. And so just before we get out of here, are there any remarks that you would like to offer as voters get ready to make their decision on who is going to represent the Louisiana Senate District 14?
Yeah, so the most important one is I want people to know that there isn't, there is an election. As we're knocking on doors, the thing that we hear the most is that they had no idea that this is happening. And so we want people to know that this is happening. We want you to tell people that this is happening. We just talked about the importance of this race, what this represents. I think that we're making Louisiana history right now. We are in the midst of it right now. But I need your support. I need your help. I need you to show up. Don't just like a post. Don't just share a post. I mean, those things are good. But the way that our democracy is saved is by diligent voters being willing to then follow through on that, to consummate the deal by voting. And I need you to do that. So we're in the midst of early voting right now. It goes through Saturday, and then election day is the 15th. I need you to show up, and I need you to show out. And if you've already voted and you still want to help, I need you to sign up to volunteer on my website, anderson2025.org. If you've already volunteered and you've already voted, and you might have a couple dollars between the cushions, you can also contribute to the campaign. But I think
empty them Kentwood jugs, Quinn. Tell them get all that change out of the Kentwood jug and go to Coin Star and donate, man. That's what a coin shortage at.
You actually have to go old school with Coming to America. We'll take the money that jingles, but we'd rather the kind that folds.
Yeah,
that is it would be nice. It would be nice.
We're grateful though, baby. It would be grateful, man.
But yeah, I mean, I just need the people's support, because we don't. I keep saying this, and people are always like, stop telling people that you're so broke. But I also want to level set, because I also get calls in the middle of the night, people saying, you need a big old sign at the corner of Winborn and Plank. And I'm like, okay, I got it. But what we lack in money, I am so grateful that we make up for in people power. Like, we have real people that are helping us. The Young Democrats just endorsed us. We have volunteers that are signing up all the time. And I feel bad, again, because people were putting in real hours. But I'm also so encouraged, because it's that serious for them. And so because it's that serious for them, I take the responsibility of being kind of the mascot of all of this very seriously as well.
Yeah. And so, like Quentin has said, there is an election going on. Make sure that not just you, but your entire network of friends, associates, co-workers, church members, community members, make sure that everyone knows that they can exercise their right to vote. Early voting is taking place right now. Will continue until February 8th, with the general election going on February 15th. So again, you have a couple more days of early voting until February 8th, with the general election taking place February 15th. We know you will be just finishing an amazing Valentine's Day. Wake up early the next morning, go to your local polling place, and make sure that you're casting your vote. Every vote needs to be heard. We're seeing nationally how important voting is. So you don't want to sit on the sidelines and someone you may support not have the power that they need to continue on to fight and work, because that's what a politician is. They are a worker for you. And you have an opportunity right now to find out more about Quentin, who wants to be one of those workers for you, by going to his website. It's very simple, anderson2025.org. Again, anderson2025.org. Again, anderson2025.org. Share with your network, share with your friends. Go and find out a little bit more about his platform. And we're actually gonna, even though we may wrap and close the actual live stream down, we're still gonna sit around, and you'll have an opportunity to continue to ask Mr. Anderson some more questions about his platform, about his ideas, his thoughts, and to find out a little bit more, because we want you to be the most informed voter as possible walking into that polling location. So remember, you can find out more information, anderson2025.org, to continue to learn more. Or if you've already voted and you want to volunteer or find out how you can be helpful to the campaign, you can do that as well. And again, remember, any politician who is seeking your vote, hold them accountable. They are not just seeking their vote. It's a job interview. They are working for you. They are servants of the people. And we want to make sure that everyone who is a servant of the people is held accountable to the people. And how do we hold them accountable? Through voting. That's your opportunity. So remember, early voting is going on until February 8th. And the general election is taking place February 15th. If you want more information as well, you can go to the Go Vote app. Again, we thank you all for joining us during this live stream. We will still continue to hang around and talk with Mr. Anderson offline and continue to find out more about his platform, just find out more about him and continue to hear his message. Again, we thank you all so much. And remember, go vote, tell a friend to go vote, and even go tell another friend and other people, even somebody you don't like, make sure that they are exercising their right to vote. Mr. Anderson, any words? Johnnie, any words?
No, thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming.
On behalf of everyone joining in with us tonight, we thank you so much. And we look forward to continuing to serve you and continuing to spread information to you. Thank you.
Good night, roaches.
So, quick question. Did your subscription prices just jump up? Yeah, same here. And you know why, right? Because of Jeff Landry and his absolutely ridiculous sales tax increase. We actually have the highest sales tax in the country now. But do you know what's worse? Larry Selders voted for it, which is crazy since it's his voters who would suffer the most. But that's Louisiana politics for you. Quentin Anderson was against it from the start. He's actually the only candidate running for state senate who opposed Landry's tax hike. He knows it's expensive enough as it is, so why make it worse, right? Baton Rouge, if we want something different, we have to choose something different. Paid for by Anderson for Louisiana.